The summer heat hung heavy over Oakwood Estates, but it was nothing compared to the firestorm brewing on Maple Lane. I never imagined I'd end up the unlikely hero of our neighborhood, standing toe-to-toe with the iron-fisted HOA president, Deborah Mitchell. Yet, when she set her sights on the Harper family whose young son was clinging to life in a hospital, Beatty knew someone had to draw a line in the sand. It all began on a blistering Tuesday afternoon. I was out front, coaxing my wilting petunias back to life with a watering can, when I spotted a work crew assembling a temporary wheelchair ramp at the Harpers' home. Their 8-year-old son, Ethan, had been diagnosed with leukemia, and after his latest round of grueling chemo, he'd need a wheelchair to get around for months. The Harpers were drowning in medical bills, trading shifts at Ethan's bedside, their lives a fragile thread of hope and exhaustion. The ramp was their lifeline way to bring their boy home. But in Oakwood Estates, nothing escaped the hawk-like gaze of Deborah Mitchell. Deborah, our 50-something HOA president, strutted across the street like she owned the place, her platinum blonde bob gleaming, her lips pursed in that perpetual scowl. Clutching her ever-present clipboard, she wore designer sunglasses despite the overcast sky, a queen surveying her kingdom. "Excuse me," she called to the workers, her voice dripping with that syrupy venom that always spelled trouble. "Do you have approval from the Architectural Review committee for this structure?" She waved at the ramp as if it were a junkyard scrap pile, not a necessity for a sick child. The lead worker, sweat beading on his brow, explained Ethan's condition, but Deborah wasn't HOA-ing it. "Rules are rules," she snapped, her manicured nails flicking dismissively. "The Harpers need to submit proper documentation and wait for approval. This eyesore comes down now." I nearly dropped my watering can. Was she serious? I marched across the street, my pulse pounding. "Deborah, come on," I said, fighting to keep my tone even. "Ethan's coming home tomorrow. He can't get into his house without this ramp." Deborah turned, her smile as cold as a winter wind. "Oh, hello, Tom. I appreciate your concern, but no one's above the HOA covenant." She tapped her clipboard with authority. "If we start making exceptions, what's next? Neon paint jobs? Car parts strewn across driveways? Total chaos." I clenched my fists, my patience fraying. "This is a medical necessity, Deborah. The Fair Housing Act protects accommodations for disabilities. This isn't about your precious aesthetics, it's about a kid getting into his own home." Her eyes narrowed behind those ridiculous sunglasses. "Are you a lawyer now, Tom? The Harpers need to follow protocol. If that ramp isn't gone by morning, they'll face the law 100 daily fines." With a pivot of her designer heels, she stormed off, Leah VYing the workers stunned and me seething. I couldn't let this stand. I snapped photos of the ramp, then drove straight to the hospital to see Michael and Sarah Harper. When I told them about Deborah's threats, Sarah's eyes welled up, her hands trembling. They'd emailed the HOA about the ramp a week ago, but got no reply. Michael, his face etched with exhaustion, looked like he hadn't slept in days. "We can't handle fines on top of everything," Sarah whispered, gripping her husband's hand. "But Ethan's coming home tomorrow. Are we supposed to carry him up the stairs when he's in agony?" I leaned forward, my resolve hardening. "You won't have to. Deborah's out of line, and I'll make sure she knows it." That night, I burned the midnight oil, digging into the law. I printed out sections of the Fair Housing Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and case studies where HOAs had been sued into oblivion for blocking medical accommodations. Buried in our own HOA bylaws, I found a gem, a medical emergency exception clause Deborah had conveniently ignored. By morning, I was armed and ready. Deborah showed up at the Harpers' house at dawn, clipboard in hand, her smirk practically audible. The ramp stood defiant, and Ethan was due home that afternoon. "I warned them," she announced loudly, as if performing for the neighbors peeking through their blinds. "Do law 100 a day, starting now." I stepped forward, my file folder heavy with EVY Denke. "Actually, Deborah, I've got something you might want to see." I handed her the documents. "This ramp is protected under federal law as a reasonable accommodation. Plus, Section 7, Paragraph 3 of our bylaws allows temporary medical structures with notification, which the Harpers sent last week. Her face flushed as she rifled through the papers, her composure cracking. This is irrelevant. The committee still needs to approve the design. I didn't miss a beat. Emergency requests get 14 days for a response. No reply? It's automatically approved. It's in the bylaws. A crowd had gathered now, neighbors whispering, their phones subtly recording. Deborah's lips thinned to a razor's edge. This isn't over, she hissed, shoving the papers back at me. We'll settle this at the board meeting tonight. I smiled, calm as a summer lake. I'll be there. And I've invited a Fair Housing Commission rep to review our policies on medical accommodations. It was a bluff, but the panic in her eyes told me it landed. She stormed off, and several neighbors approached, sharing their own Deborah horror stories, fines for unapproved, mailbox colors, citations for non-compliant, tulips. The tide was turning. That evening, the HOA meeting was a powder keg. The room buzzed with more residents than I'd ever seen, the air thick with tension. Deborah took the podium, her voice oozing authority as she adjusted the microphone. Before we begin, we must address a blatant violation at 47 Maple Lane. The Harpers have installed an unapproved structure without authorization. I shot to my feet. Point of order. This isn't on the agenda, so it can't be voted on tonight. Her eyes blazed. This is an emergency enforcement issue. I didn't flinch. Then I moved to classify the Harpers' ramp as a medical necessity exemption under Section 7. The room murmured, heads nodding. Deborah's grip on the narrative was slipping, but instead of retreating, she went nuclear. The appearance of our neighborhood drives property values, she shrieked. If we allow this, we'll have shacks and trailers next. The Harpers knew the rules. That's when Sarah Harper, who'd slipped in quietly, stood. Her voice trembled, but it carried like a thunderclap. My son just wants to come home with some dignity. This ramp is temporary, like we pray his wheelchair will be. Is your property value worth more than my child's well-being? The room fell silent, the weight of her words crushing. Deborah, unfazed, pressed on with chilling arrogance. This isn't about one child. It's about community standards. The fine stands. Michael Harper rose beside his wife. Our son's been fighting cancer for 7 months. We sent our request with doctor's notes last week. We followed your rules. Deborah fumbled through her papers, flustered. I have no record of that. That's when I played my ace. I projected an email onto the screen, the Harper's request, with Deborah's reply. Received. We'll review IEW. You acknowledged it, Deborah, I said coolly. Per the bylaws, you had 14 days to respond, or it's approved. Her face turned crimson. She leapt up, knocking over her water bottle. This meeting is out of order. I'm the president, and I decide what's an exemption. A new voice cut through the chaos. Henry Larson, a retired attorney who rarely showed up. Actually, the bylaws state medical necessities qualify automatically. Denying this violates federal law, risking due law $100,000 in fines for the HOA. The board members shifted nervously, sensing the noose tightening. Deborah, cornered, snapped. This is absurd, she roared, slamming the table. The Harpers will be fined, and if they don't comply, we'll lien their property. She jabbed a finger at me. And you, Tom, are inciting rebellion. Your untrimmed hedges have been ignored too long. The room exploded in shouts. Deborah pounded her gavel, her face a mask of fury, but no one listened. Then she made her fatal mistake. She marched to where the Harpers stood and thrust her finger in Sarah's face. Your son's illness doesn't make you special, she screamed. Sarah, the quiet schoolteacher who'd endured months of heartbreak, swatted Deborah's finger away. Deborah clutched her hand, gasping as if she'd been stabbed. She assaulted me. Call 911. To our disbelief, she dialed emergency services, claiming she'd been violently attacked. At a public meeting. 20 minutes later, 2 officers arrived, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. They interviewed witnesses, all confirming Deborah's aggression. Henry, bless him, had recorded everything, as allowed by our bylaws. The footage showed Deborah's finger in Sarah's face, Sarah's defensive sweat, and Deborah's theatrical meltdown. The senior officer turned to her. "Ma'am, filing a false police report is a crime. The video shows you invaded her space, and she used reasonable force." Deborah sputtered, while vying her unharmed hand. "False? She hit me." The officer didn't blink. "We're also aware you're enforcing restrictions that violate federal law. We'll need your ID for the report." Deborah's face drained of color. "I'm the victim," she wailed, but the officer's tone was steel. "ID, please." As she fumbled for her purse, he added, "False reporting's a misdemeanor up to a year in jail and do la 2,500 in fines." The room watched, breathless, as Deborah was escorted outside, her composure in tatters. Through the windows, we saw her gesturing wildly, a fallen tyrant. The board called an emergency vote. The ramp was approved retroactively. Deborah was ousted as president, and the Harpers got a formal apology. 3 days later, Deborah faced charges for filing a false report, her bail set at $5,000. As she was led from the courtroom, handcuffed, her sunglasses askew, her perfect hair a mess, she locked eyes with me. The rage and disbelief in her gazelle as her petty empire crumbled was a sight I'll carry forever.